What's up, Crave? Y'all doing okay? Did you enjoy the hottest week of the summer this past week? Yeah, that was not great. It's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Hey, thank you for continuing to be flexible with us. I want to say I know this is not ideal. I know this is not like anything we've ever done before, but I'm truly appreciative you continue to come. And I think what we're doing here matters. Not so much this part, but the being together part. Not that this doesn't matter, but you're tracking with me. One of the things I think we missed this year is just being together. And so I'm glad to see you here week in, week out. Thanks for coming. You're awesome. We're in our series X, the Commandments, and we're on Commandment 8 tonight. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Exodus 20. We're going to look at just one verse there, and then we'll kind of hop around some. And again, we're not doing handouts right now, so I encourage you every week, bring a journal, bring something to take notes, whether that's your phone, whatever. I look out and see you guys on your phone anyway, and so I'll just assume you're taking notes, and we'll show grace. Thou shalt not steal. You've heard that one, right? The more modern rendering of Exodus 20:15 is you must not steal. And this one's pretty clear cut, right? Like it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You're probably hoping maybe I'll just talk for like 5 minutes and then we can move on. But there's a lot more to unpack here. When we think about theft, when we think about stealing. We can go ahead and put my picture up there. I think a lot of us, when we think about stealing, we get some kind of picture like this, you know, some guy who's creeping around. He's got like Santa's bag over his shoulder, but it's like the stuff he stole. He's got kind of a creepy mustache going on. I don't know. That's what we think of when we think of a thief, right? Like somebody who's coming in a ski mask at night to like try to steal your TV or something, which as I say that out loud, stealing a TV, that's got to be really difficult. Like they're heavy, they're long. You'd be so much better off. Anyway. But this is what we think of, like this hardened criminal element, right, who's going to come in and rob and steal. But the reality is there's all different types of stealing and thievery, and we're going to unpack some of that tonight. But before we get to that, I want to ask you to think about what you think the most commonly stolen things in the world are. Does anybody have any guess? I have the top 5 things. I'll be impressed. Wallet is not on the top 5, although I'm sure people do get their wallet stolen. In the back, Mr. Gary. Pencils and pens, not in the top 5, but I'm sure that's up there, right here in the front. Jewelry, not in the top 5, but again, I bet that's in the back. Guitars? Oh, cars. I was like, guitars, that's a really odd, like, niche market, like, high end. But no, to both of those. Those are not in the top 5. Anybody on this side of the room? Peter? First of all, I broke a rule I have with myself, which is don't call on Peter. But I'm not mad. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. Jason, what you got? Music is not in the top 5, although we'll get to that shortly. Matthew? People? I mean, we're chuckling nervously, but unfortunately, that is a thing in the world today, but it's not in the top 5, thank God. So I'm going to count them down from 5 to 1. The 5th most commonly stolen thing in the world is cheese. Cheese. Apparently, a quarter of all cheese in the world is stolen. So if you and your buddies go out to get a grilled cheese, one of you is eating some stolen cheese. I don't know how they quantify that. I'm just telling you. And I looked at multiple lists. Like, you can go home and Google this. I didn't make it up. Like, cheese. Cheese used to be number 1, but now it's number 5. Demand has fallen. I don't know. Number 4 is cosmetics. I guess probably because it's easy, right? So like lipstick or mascara, it's small, it's simple. You swipe that at a CVS or a Walmart or whatever. That's number 4. Number 3 is alcohol. So specifically liquor, it said. So I don't know if that's underage people trying to get a hold of that or alcoholics, but alcohol is number 3 on the list. Number 2, razors. And again, I guess that's in that cosmetics. Now listen, I see some of you making faces. If you have to shave your head multiple times a week, I'm just going to tell you, the cost of razors does add up. And so there's a part of me that understands that. But razors is number 2. Okay, having heard all of those, anybody have a guess on number 1? Drugs, food. You're closest. It's meat. Meat is the number 1 most stolen thing in the world. I don't really know why, but it's number 1. So hearing all of that, you're probably like, all right, I've never stolen a pork chop or like a block of Colby Jack. Like, I'm good. You're going to relax, and you're like, man, tonight has nothing to do with me. I feel so good about this. But what we're going to talk about really is more the heart behind somebody who would steal. Really kind of what's going on underneath the surface when you take something that does not belong to you. What I would tell you is I think you are prioritizing yourself over others. You're saying, hey, what I need or what I want matters more than what you need or what you want. And again, it's easy to sit back and be like, well, I'm not a thief. I've not stolen anything. But we've got to get beyond thinking about just property, right? And there are people in the Bible who stole things. One of the most famous people in all the Bible is King David, right? Now, we think a lot about David and his greatest triumph, which would be the story of David and Goliath, right? The sling, the stone, cuts off his head with his own sword. It's an awesome story. But David's greatest failure is David and Bathsheba. Now, we don't talk about this one as much. And if you're not familiar with the story or if you just need a refresher, let me tell you what's going on. And if you want to read this for yourself, this is 2 Samuel 11. So if you want to check this out later, 2 Samuel 11. It starts off by saying it's the time of year when kings go to war, but David stays home. So raise your hand if you've ever gotten into trouble from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Let's just be honest for a minute. Okay, look around the room. Many of us, most of us, you're just not where you're supposed to be. And that's the case for David. He should be off fighting a war. His general is out leading the battle. His men are out fighting the battle, but he's at home. And he looks down from the palace. He sees a woman taking a bath. And he begins to lust after this woman. And Jacob, I thought, did a great job last week talking about lust. And David sees her, and the Bible says he inquires, who is this woman? Now, David's a married man at this time. He looks out and says, who's this woman? He sends some people to find out. They come back and tell him, this is Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now, Uriah was one of David's mighty men, not just like a common foot soldier, like the guy who stands like in the third row, seventh down. This is Uriah. He was one of King David's mighty men. You can go and read. There's 2 different lists in the Bible. The first list is a group of 37 men, and then it expands to about 80. But these are like the baddest of the bad. These are the guys you want on the front line out there fighting the battle. Many of them were with David in the wilderness when he was running from Saul. And so David knew Uriah. It wasn't some nameless, faceless soldier, somebody he knew. And it immediately moves from the second verse, which says, this is the wife of Uriah the Hittite, to David sending for her. She comes to the palace and he sleeps with her. And he sends her back home. Now, probably you have a passing familiarity with this story. What happens next? She's pregnant. And here's the tough part for David. Uriah's gone fighting in the battle. And so David tries to cover it up. And he sends for Uriah to come back home. He gets him drunk. He's like, hey man, go hang out with your wife. And he's like, no, I can't do it. There's a battle to be fought. And so he sends him back to the battle with instructions to give to the general that say this: put Uriah in the front where the fighting is at the thickest, and then pull back and don't tell him, to make sure that he dies. And that's what happens. Uriah is killed. And David thinks he's gotten away with it, right? He thinks, I can now take Bathsheba as my wife. Nobody will be the wiser, except God knows what happens. And God has a prophet named Nathan. And God sends Nathan to confront David. And he tells him a story. And the story is heartbreaking. He says, King David, there's 2 men in your kingdom. One is rich and has many cattle, many lambs. He's doing pretty well for himself. Another has 1 lamb. It's his whole world. It's everything he's got. It eats from his plate. It drinks from his cup. And if you're kind of a squirmy person at that, it's meant to convey how special this lamb is, okay? It says that he cuddles this lamb like it's his own daughter. But then the rich man has a guest come into town, and instead of taking from his overflow of cattle, of lambs for the meal, he rips the lamb away from the poor man, kills it, and has it served for the dinner. And he says, David, what should we do? And David says, well, this guy should be killed who did this. This is horrible. And he'll have to repay 4 times what he stole. And Nathan says, David, you're the man. You have taken from someone who had so little when you had so much. And he's confronted with his sin, and he's broken, and he confesses this sin. Psalm 51, if you've ever read that, is David pouring out his heart to God. in repentance over what he's done. And we're real quick. David was a murderer, right? God can use anybody. David was a murderer. Back up in that story a minute. Consider that David used his privilege and his position as king to bring a woman who was not his wife into his bed. And sometimes we'll even say, well, David was an adulterer. But you have to confront the possibility that David took something by force, that she didn't feel like she could say no. We have a word for that. It's called rape. And that maybe makes us uncomfortable. King David makes us uncomfortable. But he took something that was not his. And he tried to cover it up. Why do I spend so much time just kind of walking back through that story? I think there's a couple things we can learn from David and what he went through as we think about sin, as we think about stealing. First one is this, and this isn't on the screen. I came up with it after I'd already turned in my notes. Sin always leads to more sin. Always. Everybody in this room has sinned. Think about some of the bigger stupid moments in your life, the things that you look back and you're like, man, that was crazy dumb. I can't believe I did that. And then backtrack from there. You probably didn't wake up and just commit a huge, big sin. Look at David. David didn't wake up one morning and be like, you know what? I'm going to force a woman to sleep with me who's not my wife, and I'm going to kill her husband. You know what his sin was? He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. These things add up. And once he realized, she's pregnant, then it led to, well, now I'm going to do this, and now I'm going to do this. Sin always leads to more sin. You'll dig yourself deeper and deeper and deeper. Some of you have walked in here tonight, and you've got that shovel in your hands, and you know what I'm talking about. You just keep digging yourself deeper. You've got to be aware of what's going on in your heart as you're dealing with this stuff. Second thing I would say is this: none of us are above sin. Like, this is King David, maybe the most famous person in the entire Old Testament. A man who is after God's own heart. He's anointed by God. He was chosen by God, and yet he made a mistake. He made some horrible mistakes, and he got caught. Nobody is above sin. Nobody is above making mistakes. That's myself included. So don't ever put anybody in your life up on some pedestal where you think, man, they'll never mess up. They will. Sin comes for us all. Last thing I would say is we often fail to recognize the sin in our own lives. It's not until God confronts David with Nathan the prophet that he realizes, yeah, I've done these things. We're really, really quick to hone in on the stuff in other people's lives, and we often will give ourselves a pass. As we've been talking through these commandments over these last several weeks, I would caution you to not sit there and think about, yeah, I know so-and-so breaks that one all the time. Or my family, they're real bad about this one. We need to confront what's going on inside of ourselves, and that's hard. David actually later writes to God, search me, try me, point out anything in me that's offensive. I've got to believe this was a defining moment in his life. So, if you're still sitting here thinking like, well, but I don't steal, so I really kind of don't know where this is coming from, let's talk about it in broader terms. We've looked at the first 8 commandments so far. We've got 2 left. The first 4 deal with loving God, right? We talked about that. The back 6 talk about loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. And if you're not familiar, Jesus is asked, what's the most important commandment? He says, love God with everything you are, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so we've talked over the last several weeks, honoring your parents, that's loving them as you love yourself, right? Not committing adultery, not stealing. We'll talk next week about lying. We'll talk about coveting in a few weeks. But all these deal with loving your neighbor well. When you take something that's not yours, that belongs to somebody else, that's not loving your neighbor well. That's not loving them as you love yourself. That's elevating yourself to be more important than them. Now, most of us in this room would never say, I'm more important than you, Ryan. Like, I look at you and I look at me and I matter more, and what I want matters more than what you want. Most of us would not say that to another human being. Like, I don't think you would. I know most of you. I think you're pretty good people. But we act that way. And it's hard when you put some words on it. Hey, what I care about matters more than what you care about. And what I want is more important than what you want. Even if it's yours, I deserve this. We would never say that out loud, but that's how we act. We elevate ourselves, and what we should be doing is trying to elevate others in our lives. Jot down this reference, Philippians 2:3. We'll put it on the screen. This is a beginning of a passage that's great on humility. If you're sitting here struggling with the thought of, man, maybe I really do have myself too highly in priority in my life, go check out Philippians 2, and it starts here. It says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourself. Now, if you struggle with that language, maybe another way to say this would be thinking of others more than you think of yourselves. You don't have to make yourself a doormat and be worth nothing to elevate other people, but what we have to stop doing is thinking of only ourselves and only ourselves first. Taking a genuine consideration for the people in our lives, because again, that's what we're called to do. And tonight, and specifically, we're talking about stealing, and that's not loving our neighbor well. So, I want to talk a little bit about some of the different ways that we steal. Okay? The first would obviously be someone's property, right? So, if I want that cool mask band that Will has on his neck right now, and I just take it, that's stealing, obviously. And you're like, duh, don't take something that physically belongs to somebody else that's not yours. We all cool with that one? Nod your head if you understand that. You feel pretty good about that one. Okay, cool. That's the easiest one. Now we'll get into some of the tougher ones. Because if property is one that we understand, intellectual property is another one. So, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands for this one, but if you've ever cheated on a test, you have stolen someone else's intellectual property. That's not yours. But Kevin, I had to stay up late working on something else, and my siblings and my sports, and it was just the one time. It's funny how we'll tell ourselves it's just one time, and it becomes a second time and a third time and 100th time. We'll justify, I was doing so many other good things. I was at church. I couldn't study. You're stealing somebody else's intellectual property. If you've ever plagiarized, right? You ever had a paper due on a book that you just thought was dumb and you didn't want to read, so you went to Google and said, help me out, Google. Guys, there are whole websites out there that you can get plagiarized papers from if you've ever done that. That's stealing. If you've ever presented somebody else's idea as your own, right? Like you're talking something over in a group, and then you take credit for what somebody else has said, that's stealing. That's not right. See, it's not all as cut and dry and simple as don't physically take something out of somebody else's hands. How about this one? This will make us a little bit uncomfortable. Digital piracy. You're like, ooh, that sounds fancy. What is that? Show of hands for this one. If you have ever downloaded or watched a bootleg film or song, let's just see a show of hands in this room, okay? It's a safe place, guys. We're not going to take the recording from security and turn you into the FBI. But look around. That's a lot of us. And I'm not just showing you how to do that. Do you know the number of viruses I have infected my computers with over the years trying to get the latest movie that's out? I've done this. You can put your hands down. Some of y'all still got your hands up. You're super guilty about this. It's okay. You're like, my computer's downloading at home right now. Don't go home, delete it, okay? Those FBI warnings you see on the beginning of those films are like, blah, 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 blah. You don't ever even look at it. That's stealing. And Kevin, you're on your high horse. No, I've done that. How about this one? If you or your family shares streaming service passwords with somebody not in your family, let's see a show of hands. Again, this is not a demonstration. I have done this. You got to think about it. You're looking at a profile on your Netflix, you're like, I don't even know who that is. Now, hear me, this is what we'll do. Netflix is a multi-million-dollar company. I'm not hurting anybody. You're hurting your integrity. If you will cut a corner on a little thing, later in life when you've got something big, you'll cut that corner too. You don't wake up and make those big, huge, bonehead decisions. It starts with a lot of small things. Now, some of y'all are like, oh my gosh, I have to go home and get my own Netflix. It's $10 a month. Listen, that's between you and Jesus. I'm not going to come and ask you face to face, but you need to think about some of these things. It's not as clear cut as it seems at first. Now, money. This is a whole other category. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands if you've ever stolen money. But when I say that, the first thing you probably think of is a bank heist, right? Like hiding in the wall and you're cracking the safe. You can steal money a lot of different kinds of ways. I'll tell on myself. When I was a kid, my parents had a change tower. I have a change jar. I'm not as fancy. But they had these little tubes, and there was a quarter tube, a nickel tube, dime, etc. And I would go in there, and I would take quarters, and I wouldn't just take like the top 2 or 3 quarters. I was much smarter. I would take like 20, 30 quarters out, and I put some nickels down in there. And then I would take some quarters, and I'm like, that looks about the same. They'll never know. Surprise, they eventually found out. But I would do that. And here was the rationale for 8, 9, 10-year-old Kevin. Rather than annoying my mom and asking her for a quarter at the grocery store so I can go over here and turn the little thing and get the egg or play the claw machine game, yes, those were the things I did when I was a kid, and that's why I wanted the quarters. I'll just take it now. It'll be fine. I work hard around here. I do my chores. I don't get an allowance. I deserve this. Cutting a corner that's small like that, stupid like that when you're 8, 9, 10 years old can lead you to do some dumb things with your money when you're older. Tax fraud. You're like, this doesn't apply to me. I don't even make money. Cool, but one day you will. It's estimated that over $400 billion, that's billion with a B, $400 billion worth of tax evasion and fraud happens every year. Being faithful and having integrity with your money when you're younger can filter into later when you do have money. Or here's another one, money-wise. If you're messing with the clock in, clock out at work, and you're not really working, but you have somebody do that for you. Or even if you're just sitting there not working when you're supposed to be, stealing. You're not being faithful. You're not having integrity in that. The Bible talks a ton about this. If you want to read more about money, you can go look at Haggai 2:8, Malachi 3 through 10, James 1:17. There's a lot to say about money. How about intimacy? You're like, oh, geez, I thought we were past this. I didn't come last week because I knew Jacob was talking about this, and now he's coming back with this again. If you sleep with somebody that you are not married to, you're stealing. You are. You are stealing from the future relationship they'll have with their spouse, and you're robbing the intimacy you can have with your spouse one day. Hear me say this. Here, I want every eye right here, real quick. There's a lot of things you can talk about when it comes to premarital sex. We can talk about STDs and unwanted pregnancies and all that, but hear me say this. The robbing of future intimacy is serious. If you do not believe me, have a conversation with somebody who's walked through that. You are setting yourself up for failure in the future with stupid decisions today. And you're robbing yourself of something that's healthy, something that's good and holy, for something cheap and quick now. How about revenge? Anybody ever take revenge? You can throw your hands up for this one. Boy, okay, your hand went up a little too quickly over there. I saw that. You were like proud of the revenge that you have taken. Most of us have taken revenge, right? Like it's, you got me, cool. I'm now going to get you, and I'm going to get ahead a little bit. When you take revenge, you are stealing. And this one's pretty important. Throw my verse up for me. This is Romans 12:19. Never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So, yes, you're stealing from God. Now, I don't know how comfortable you feel with that. I don't feel great about it. I just don't. And if any of you have spent any amount of time with me, you know, like, I struggle with this. I have a lot of anger and a lot of passion. If you get me, I'm coming at you twice as hard. But when you take revenge, you're taking something that God says, hey, that's mine. You don't take that. I'll settle things out when it's all said and done. Don't you worry about it. I don't feel great about stealing from God, and I hope that that gives you some pause as you think about it. Now, as we've been going throughout this series, and listen, I could give you 10 more examples, but for the sake of time, we'll move on. We've been talking through the series like, hey, do we still have to follow the commandments? We live under the new covenant. This is Old Testament, old school. Do we still have to do this? What does Jesus say? What does the New Testament say? Well, first of all, Jesus does cite this a number of times as people ask him about the commandments. This one comes up numerous times. And Paul says it this way in Ephesians chapter 4. Paul, who wrote over half of the New Testament, says this. If you are a thief, quit stealing. Right there. That's pretty simple, right? Instead, use your hands for good hard work and then give generously to others in need. So Paul's saying, hey, it's not enough just to stop doing that bad thing. Instead, why don't we replace it with something that's going to be a benefit and a blessing to others? So, yes, we are still bound by the command to not steal. We shouldn't be doing that because that's not loving our neighbor well. And as you wrestle with this, the question I really want you to ask yourself is this: who is ultimate in my life? Who is ultimate in my life? Now, we're sitting here in church. The obvious church answer would be Jesus, right? You got to say it slow like we're in Sunday school. Jesus. But if we were honest, the answer is probably me. Like, I'm ultimate in my own life. I do what I want for me, what's going to benefit me, what's going to help me get ahead. I think about me the most. If you're honest, who's ultimate in your life? Who are you serving? Who are you most concerned with? I would tell you, I think for most of us, if we're honest, it's us, and then maybe some people that we're really close with, and then honestly, third, fourth, fifth down on the list, and really just when we need them, is God. Oh, geez, somebody in my family's sick, or oh, man, I got this huge test, or oh, something terrible's happened. Oh, God, I need you. But we've set ourselves up as ultimate in our own lives. Now, this is not rocket science here, but the real order this should go in, we can put that up for you, is God should be ultimate in your life. Like, you know this. Others should come before you, and you should think of yourself last. Unfortunately, we tend to go from right to left instead of left to right. And this goes beyond just stealing. It's all these commands we've been looking at. It starts with loving God well, and it moves to loving your neighbor as yourself. We've talked a lot about the Imago Dei, everyone being an image bearer of God. The worst person you know, the most annoying person you know, made in the image of God. And we keep talking about that because, if I'm honest with you, I just don't think we get it. We give intellectual assent. We're like, yeah, no, I get it. Everyone is made in God's image. But then we walk out of here and we go right back to doing whatever suits us. And we don't really care about anybody else. Who is ultimate in your life? Are you going to continue to steal in some of these ways we've talked about tonight, or the other ways that I didn't even touch on, but you know because the Holy Spirit's made it clear to you? I don't want to be a thief. I have been. I've confessed that here tonight. A lot of us have. As we close, I'll just share with you a verse about thieves. It's one of the first verses I ever memorized. If you're ever looking for like, hey, I struggle with memory verses, or is this a good verse to memorize? I got one for you. It comes from John 10:10. We'll put it up on the screen. The 10:10 is super easy to remember, right? It's just the one number twice. This is Jesus speaking. He says, the thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Now, Jesus is talking about the enemy. He's talking about Satan. And if Satan's a thief, I don't want to identify with him. He just wants to come and steal. He wants to kill. He wants to destroy. He wants nothing good in your life. But Jesus says, I've come to give you something that's better, something that's rich and satisfying. And I want you to hear me say this. This is not just Jesus talking about heaven one day in the nebulous future that who knows when that'll happen. It's now. This idea of living out the kingdom now, advancing the kingdom here on earth, of living for Christ in a way that shows our love for Him and for others now. If we reduce Christianity to just going to heaven one day, we miss what we've been sent here to do. So don't miss it. All right? Let me pray for us and we'll go to small group. God, thank you for your word. We thank you for how it convicts us. We thank you for how it encourages us. And tonight I pray as we go to small group and we just consider our selfishness, our pride, our arrogance. For some of us, our theft, our stealing from others. God, I pray that you would remind us that you sent your son Jesus to die that we could have eternal, abundant, rich, satisfying life, not just one day in heaven, but here today. And so, God, I pray that you would move in these conversations. I pray that you would just show us what you want us to know and help us to stop putting ourselves as the ultimate figure in our lives and start worshiping you as Lord. We love you. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.